And welcome back to Washington Commanders Insider. Today, we're going to be looking at some NFL draft prospects at the wide receiver position and also to the running back position that the Washington Commanders might want to take a look at in this upcoming NFL draft. We're also going to be looking at the wide receiver market, and we're going to be looking at players that have been linked to the Washington Commanders. We're going to be looking at one player in particular that I think the Washington Commanders could still really make a play on. And so let's start with the wide receiver market, and let's start with the latest news around T. Higgins. And so it looks like that the Bengals are looking to reportedly go ahead and franchise tag him for the second year in a row with the hopes of getting a long-term deal. And so this links to the Washington Commanders because it was just expected that maybe if he went to free agency that the Washington Commanders with the salary cap would be able to go out and sign him. And so I definitely think that if that situation were to happen, the Washington Commanders would certainly think about it. I don't think that this is the type of front office that is going to go into an overpay situation, which is why I think that even if he weren't franchise tagged, I think that you're probably not going to see T. Higgins end up with the Washington Commanders. It would have to make sense for what they're doing as far as maximizing Jaden Daniels, his contract. And it's also, too, the Washington Commanders still have to address other positions with this football team. So it wouldn't be smart to just really put a lot of money, I think, into one player when you have other aspects of your football team that need to get better. And so, with that T. Higgins news, I think that this really takes them out of that. I don't think the Washington Commanders are going to make a play for that. And so next up, I wanted to look at another player that we talked about yesterday, and I definitely think that they're probably out on him as well, and that is Davante Adams. I think that if those reports are true that we talked about where he wants to go to a West Coast team, then I think that the Washington Commanders are obviously out of the running for him. And then two as well, you got to think about that from a contract standpoint as well. I know Davante Adams is a little bit older. He's not quite getting the separation at the top maybe of the routes that he used to, but he could still be very impactful for your team. And so, I just think that maybe this is another player that the Washington Commanders are probably out on. Next up, I would say maybe Cooper Kupp. I think that, the more that I think about that situation with him, we haven't really heard too much else about anything going on with him, especially since, there was the report that, they wanted to go ahead and trade him. Obviously, something he didn't agree with. But there's not too much rumors or noise around that. So that suggests that maybe there's not going to be maybe that trade market for him. And I'm not sure that the Washington Commanders are going to be that team that certainly would be in the running to trade for him. And even if they cut him, I'm not sure if the Washington Commanders are going to be the ones to really pick him up. I think that would be of interest. I think it is going to depend on just, how much money he would want, and also too, what other upgrades maybe at the wide receiver position do the Washington Commanders really do? Because I think that is going to play a factor maybe into if you're going to get Cooper Kupp, especially if you feel like he's not going to have the same role that he had with the Rams, and you have a younger receiver that's going to take on a more expansive role with the team, then maybe you move away from him. Now, one wide receiver that I do think the Washington Commanders should still be in very much play for is Chris Godwin. I think that Chris Godwin, if he becomes available for or from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I think that you try to find a way to go out there and get him. I love the fact that he has won a Super Bowl ring, and so he's going to bring that type of, kind of energy, that type of juice to this roster. I think that we need that. I think that that's been really something that has helped this team kind of turn the page as far as the personality and identity is concerned. And then when you look at his production, look, I know he had I think a dislocated ankle in this last season, but still with that, he had 50 receptions, 576 yards. He still had 5 touchdowns. And that right there alone is just, I think, 100 yards maybe off of what Zach Ertz was able to do. And he played, pretty much the full season here. He had 654 yards. And so that right there would be the clear number 3 on the team. You can imagine if he could play a full season, what Chris Godwin would be able to do. The year before that, he went for 1,000. The year before that, over 1,000. The year before that, over 1,000. And so here's a player that can run all the routes. We know that he can run over the middle of the field. He can definitely catch the deep ball as well, can catch contested footballs. And so I think that if the Washington Commanders are going to go after a wide receiver that could be available in this market, I would like for them to go after Chris Godwin. So we'll see what happens there. And so next, I wanted to go ahead and shift focus and look at these draft prospects. And so this comes off of Commander's Wire, and this is a mock draft that was on Pro Football Focus. We talked about this a little bit before. In fact, yesterday I was talking about the cornerback from Texas, Jahdae Barron, right, and how good he is. And so these are a couple other players that were listed in that mock draft. I wanted to focus just specifically on the wide receiver position, and then also to the running back that was suggested in this mock draft. And so I want to start here with Kobe Hudson out of UCF. And so, look, he is when you look at his tape, he reminds me a lot of a Steve Smith Sr. He was a finalist here, I think, for the Hall of Fame. If you're not sure who he was, played a lot of good years with the Panthers, played for the Ravens as well. In fact, first team All-Pro 2001 to 2005, co-leader in receptions in 2005. He was the comeback player of the year, 5-time Pro Bowler. Like, he reminds me a lot of that. I love the physicality that he brings off the line of scrimmage. He's not a player that I think is necessarily going to run away from you, but with that physicality, he's not going to get redirected off the line of scrimmage. So you love that. I think that the route tree is completely open for him. He catches a lot of contested footballs. That was one of the things that I liked with him. And I do get the sense that he has a little bit of Deebo Samuel with that power that he possesses. Like, he's that type of player that he looks like he's almost seeking contact. And I love that about him. So he's a tough wide receiver, I think, after the catch. And so you do love that. As far as one of the I guess the cons about him, and one of the things that they say in one of the draft profiles that I was looking at here, is that it looks like that he's had issues with drop passes. And so has been an issue for him. At times, the route's just not as crisp as you want. And kind of winning a little bit more so in press coverage and things like that is something that they talked about. But for the most part, I mean, it looks like he's a pretty polished player, and one that I would love the Washington Commanders to get, because I can envision Kobe Hudson really working the middle of the field, 6'1", 200 pounds. He went for 47 receptions, 770 yards, 4 touchdowns last year. But what's more impressive is that he was averaging 16.4 an average. And I think that he runs the deep post very well. I love that. I love the fact that he's a great, pass catcher on the boundary. So if Jaden Daniels has to drop it into a bucket, I trust that Kobe Hudson would be able to really catch that football. And he's just a solid player, man. Like, I like what he can really present to this football team. And so I definitely think that if he were to fall to the Washington Commanders here, I would love it. I think right now, currently in this particular mock draft, they have him at round 5. And look, maybe that is a steal, really, with Kobe Hudson. I think that he is that type of player that, like I said, he reminds me of a Steve Smith Sr., and then he also gives you a little bit of that Jamison kind of Crowder kind of vibe as well, with the way that he can kind of work the middle of the field and kind of come up with catches and things like that. So I think it's a solid pickup. Next, I want to talk about just what the Washington Commanders could possibly do if they decide to maybe upgrade the running back room. And so shifting focus now and looking here at a running back that was suggested here, and this was a round 7 pickup in Raheem Sanders. And I think it's Raheem Rocket Sanders out of South Carolina. And so, initially when I looked at his tape, I think what I'm reminded of with him is kind of like a David Montgomery, but maybe a little bit faster. I think he's got a little bit more speed than him. He does give me like a little bit of shades of like a Brian Robinson Jr., which we already have. Like, I do feel that sense of power from him. Definitely a player like that. As far as just, other things and aspects about him, like he can get into being a pretty good pass catcher. I think that was something that really jumped off the tape. I think this last season out, he had 183 carries, 881 yards. He had 11 touchdowns. He averaged 4.8 a carry. So, here's a guy that, look, man, once he got through the line, he knew what to do with it. He's not a player that is going to be like a home run hitter. We talked about that before, and that's a player that can just really take it to the house like that. I don't think he's necessarily that type of player, but I think he finishes runs very well. And I think that he really would be a terrific pickup for the Washington Commanders if we're looking to get, I think, a power back that has that pinch of speed, like I said, that has the David Montgomery type of feel to him. I think that if you give it to him near the end zone, I think he's certainly a player that he knows how to find the end zone. So I could see him being a touchdown machine, especially once you get it in the red zone. And so that is a plus here. And so that's a player that I wouldn't mind the Washington Commanders taking. But another player that I just want to kind of throw out there, and I'm not sure when he's going to be available because I've seen some mock drafts where he's been a first rounder. I've seen some where he's been a second rounder, but it is going to be Travion Henderson. I think that Travion Henderson, look, if he were to fall to the Washington Commanders, I think I would definitely love to take him out of Hopewell, Virginia there. But look, man, this guy is tough. Played for Ohio State, senior. He's 5'10", 208, so maybe a little undersized there. But, man, you talk about breakaway speed. Like, he has the breakaway speed, and he runs with the power, and I love that about him. And so he is absolutely a player that I would certainly love to have here. I think NFL.com, they have him as a comparison to an Aaron Jones type of player, which plays for the Minnesota Vikings currently. And so I do see that similarity with that stature and the way that he runs the football. But, man, he is – I mean, when he gets into the open field, the way he switches gears and the way he comes off cuts and things like that, it is beautiful to watch on tape. And I can imagine him with Jaden Daniels, really when Jaden Daniels is in the shotgun and he's, maybe looking and he gets it to him on a little screen pass or a dump off, like I can see him making things happen. And I can also see him as well just coming off the cut and being a home run hitter. He reminds me a little bit of what you see with Saquon Barkley. Like, once they get gone, they're gone. And so here's a player that I would love the Washington Commanders to take. And so anyway, let me know in the comments what you think here about these recent draft prospects at the running back position. Do you think that, yes, they might go with Travion Henderson if given that opportunity? Do you like for them to maybe go with the wide receiver here, Kobe Hudson out of UCF? Let me know what you're thinking here. Or even, this running back here out of South Carolina, Raheem Rocket Sanders. Do they go there? And lastly, with the wide receiver market, do you feel like, yes, Chris Godwin would be a player you would like to have with the Washington Commanders, and really you feel like that might be maybe the best option when it comes to adding a veteran wide receiver that is productive, that certainly he's going to want a contract, but is not necessarily going to want, I think, that much money because he's coming into a winning situation with a terrific quarterback. And so let me know in the comments what you're thinking. And as I always say, go Commanders, and I will see you on the next one. All right, peace.